She fired the single dad in front of everyone. She spoke freely, unaware. He owned the company. The meeting had already started when Marcus walked in. He was 7 minutes late. He knew it. He did not rush. He moved through the glass door at the end of the hall with the quiet steadiness of a man who had long stopped apologizing for the way his mornings went. The coffee in his hand was cold. He had forgotten to drink it, somewhere between dropping Lily at school and finding a parking spot on the 4th level of the garage. The bag on his shoulder had a crayon drawing on the strap. His daughter had done it the night before, while sitting on the floor of his home office, talking to him about her friend Nina and whether frogs could be pets. He had not cleaned it off. He would not clean it off. The conference room on the 14th floor was full. 30 people sat around the long table and along the walls, all of them facing the projection screen at the front. Nobody noticed him come in. He found an empty chair near the back corner, set his cold coffee on the table, and sat down. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket. Lily had drawn it that morning at breakfast. A yellow house. A tree with too many branches. A man with a big square smile standing in front of it. She had written the words, "My dad," underneath the man in red crayon, the letters uneven and proud. Marcus held it in both hands and looked at it for a moment, then set it on the table beside his coffee. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the woman running the meeting. Her name was Diana Cole. She had been with the company for 8 months. She had come in with a title that took up most of a business card and a reputation that had arrived before she did. The board had hired her to sharpen things. That was the word they used. Sharpen. Like the company was a pencil that had gone dull. Diana had taken the job seriously from her first day. She restructured the sales process. She redesigned the onboarding system. She held the kind of meetings where people sat up straight and checked their phones only when they thought she was looking at the screen. She was good at her job. Marcus had watched her from a distance for most of those 8 months. He had read her reports. He had approved several of her proposals without comment. He had never introduced himself in person. He had a habit of doing that, of watching people work before he made himself known to them. It was not a test, exactly. He just believed that people showed you who they were when they did not know they were being watched. Diana Cole had shown him quite a lot in 8 months. She was standing at the front of the room now, talking about the third quarter numbers with the kind of calm authority that made people take notes. Her blazer was the color of dark slate. Her posture was perfect. She spoke without filler words. When someone asked a question she did not immediately know the answer to, she said, "Let me confirm that before I give you a number," instead of guessing. Marcus noticed that. He always noticed that. He turned the drawing over in his hands. He was thinking about slide 7, which had been on the screen when he came in. The projection numbers were slightly off. Not wrong in a way that would damage anything, just slightly misaligned with the figures he had reviewed the previous week. He made a note on the corner of Lily's drawing with a pen from his bag, the one with the bite mark on the cap that Lily had also made. He was thinking about the Meridian account, which Diana had mentioned briefly before moving on. He thought she had been right to flag it, but wrong to leave it so quickly. He would have brought it up if she had asked the room. She had not asked the room. She had not looked at the back corner yet either. He did not mind that. He was comfortable being the last thing people noticed. He had been that way most of his life. Diana was mid-sentence when she stopped. It was not a gradual pause. It was the kind of stop that happens when something catches a person completely off guard and their body reacts before their thinking does. She had turned toward the side of the room to address one of the department leads, and her eye had swept across the back corner and landed on Marcus. She looked at him the way people look at something that does not fit. The polo shirt, the cold coffee, the bag with the crayon mark on the strap, the man sitting with his arms resting on the table, holding a child's drawing, leaning back like he had every right to be exactly where he was. She looked at him for 2 full seconds without speaking. The room noticed she had stopped. Heads turned. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was still composed, still professional, but there was an edge underneath it, thin and certain. "I don't believe I know you." Marcus looked up from the drawing. "I just sat down," he said. His tone was easy, not defensive, not apologetic. Diana took a step toward him. "Just one. This is a closed strategy session. It is for personnel only." She looked at him carefully. "Do you work here?" "I have." Marcus said. Since the beginning. She paused at that. Something moved across her face, quick and unreadable. Then her chin lifted slightly. That isn't really an answer to my question. She said it the way people say things when they have already decided and are only waiting for the formality of an ending. The room was completely still. 30 people. None of them breathing particularly hard. Marcus did not move. He looked at her with the same calm expression he'd had since she'd first noticed him. Not challenging, not amused, just steady. He had the kind of face that didn't do much with tension. I don't have you on the list, Diana said. And this session covers sensitive company strategy. I'm going to need you to step out. She paused. If you are an employee, you're welcome to follow up with HR about the attendance policy. If you're a vendor or contractor, you'll need to be signed in through the front desk before you sit in on anything like this. She said the word vendor with just enough weight to make it land. Someone near the middle of the table let out a short sound. Not quite a laugh, the kind of sound a person makes when they catch themselves almost laughing and pull it back. Diana glanced at her tablet on the table, like she was already moving on. Please collect your things. Marcus looked at the drawing in his hands. He folded it carefully along the original crease, the one Lily had made. He tucked it back into his shirt pocket. He picked up his cold coffee. He reached over and took the pen from the table. He stood up. All right, he said. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Not anything, really. Just the one word. Quiet and even, like a door closing softly. He walked out. He did not look back at the room. He did not look at the faces that watched him go. He walked the length of the hall to the elevator, pressed the button for the 20th floor, and stepped in when the doors opened. The elevator was empty. He drank his cold coffee. On the 20th floor, the hallway was quiet. His office was at the far end, corner position, 2 walls of windows looking out over the city. It was not a decorated office. There were no trophies on the shelves, no framed articles about the company, no photographs lined up for visitors to admire. There was a desk, a chair, a laptop, a small stack of folders, and on the windowsill, 3 drawings Lily had made. A purple dog, a rainbow over a building, a portrait of the 2 of them holding hands, both of them with circle heads and stick arms, and identical giant smiles. He set his coffee down. He stood at the window and looked at the city, which stretched out below him in every direction. He had looked at this view for 14 years. He had looked at it on the day they signed the lease for this floor, when the company had 12 employees, and he had to borrow a chair from the hallway to sit in his own office. He had looked at it the morning after Cora died, standing here in the dark at 5 in the morning, because there was nowhere else to go, and the apartment felt too quiet, and Lily had finally fallen back asleep, and he just needed somewhere to put himself. He looked at it now. He was not angry. That was the thing that might have surprised people if they could see him. He was not embarrassed or rattled or running the scene back through his head looking for the moment where it went wrong. He was just thinking. He was thinking that Diana Cole had acted exactly like someone who was doing her job. She had seen a man who did not look like he belonged in a closed session, and she had removed him. She had done it with authority and without cruelty, which was more than a lot of people managed. She had been wrong, but she had been wrong in an understandable direction. He was also thinking about slide 7. He reached over to his desk and wrote a short note on the top folder. The projection numbers. 3 lines. He would have someone cross-check them before the report went to the board. He sat down. Outside, the city moved the way it always did. Without him. Without stopping. Without caring what floor he was on, or what had just happened 1 floor below. He opened his laptop. He had 12 new emails. 3 of them were about the meeting. 2 of those were from people in the room. The 3rd was from his assistant, Priya, whose name sat in his inbox with a subject line that said, "Please call me when you have a moment." He called her. She picked up on the first ring. "I heard," she said. "News travels." Marcus. She said his name the way she always did when things had gone sideways on a day she had been trying to keep orderly. Like his name was a short form of everything she was trying not to say. She told people in the hallway after you left that you were probably a vendor who got turned around. He was quiet for a moment. "She isn't wrong that the bag looks like something a vendor would carry," he said. Priya did not laugh. What do you want to do? He looked at the drawings on his windowsill. The purple dog, the rainbow, the two stick figures with the same big smile. Set up a meeting, he said. Tomorrow morning. Her, me, and the board liaison. Conference room B, not the big one. Should I tell her who's requesting it? Tell her the company's chief executive would like a brief word before the week is out. A pause. I'll send the invite now. One more thing, Marcus said. Send something to her office first. Something for her desk. Not flowers. Something with more use than flowers. What kind of something? He thought about it. A good plant. Something that takes a little work to keep alive. And the card? No card, he said. He ended the call. He opened the third email, the one from Priya that had come in before he called. She had already started a draft of the meeting invite. She had already blocked the time on his calendar. She had also, at the bottom of the email, added a note in parentheses that said, Lily called the main desk at 11:15. She wanted to know if frogs could be pets. I told her I would ask you. Marcus read that twice. Then he opened a new email, typed his daughter's school address into the recipient line, and wrote, The answer is yes, but they are very serious about their habitat. We can talk about it at pickup. Love, Dad. He sent it. He turned back to the city. He had a company to run. He got back to work. Diana stood at the front of the conference room for 3 more seconds after Marcus left. 3 seconds of a room that was very, very quiet. Then she turned back to her presentation and said, Where were we? And the room exhaled and they moved on. She finished the meeting in 54 minutes, which was 6 minutes under the time she had scheduled. She wrapped with a summary of action items, assigned owners, and set a follow-up date. She thanked people for their time. She watched them file out. Rachel from accounts was the last one to leave. Rachel had been with the company for 6 years and had a way of knowing things before other people did. Not because she was nosy, but because she paid attention to the texture of rooms. She paused at the door. Good meeting, she said. Thank you, Diana said. Rachel nodded once and left. Diana gathered her things. She felt good about the meeting, the way she usually felt when something ran smoothly. She had not given the man in the back corner much thought since he walked out. He had looked confused, she decided. Maybe a delivery. Maybe a contractor who had wandered into the wrong room. It happened sometimes. People got turned around in the building. She went back to her office. She had work to do. She had been working for about 40 minutes when her desk phone rang. It was the front receptionist, a young man named Owen, who handled the main desk with extreme seriousness and a clipboard he carried everywhere. Ms. Cole, Owen said, there's a delivery for your office. A plant. A plant? Yes, a large one. From the building's florist. No card. Diana looked up from her screen. No card? No, ma'am. Just the plant. She had the plant brought up. It arrived in a terracotta pot, broad-leafed and full, the kind that needed real light and regular water, the kind that would not survive neglect. It was placed on the table near her window by a delivery person who said nothing, only nodded, and left. Diana stood in front of it for a moment. No card. She did not know what to make of it. She returned to her desk and put it out of her mind. That evening, she stayed late to review the action items from the meeting. She was looking at the slide 7 projections when something snagged her attention, a small discrepancy, not large enough to flag to the room, but enough to make her pause. She ran the numbers against the previous week's report. They were slightly off. She frowned. She corrected them. She noted the fix in the log. She drove home at nearly 9 that evening. She lived in a clean, spare apartment 20 minutes from the office, the kind of place that reflected someone who had not decided yet what she wanted her life to look like outside of work. There was good furniture and almost nothing on the walls. She made dinner. She answered 2 more emails. She went to bed. She was asleep by 10:30. She did not think about Marcus again that night. The morning came in through her blinds at 6. By 7, she was at her desk. By 8, she had 2 cups of coffee, a reviewed agenda for the day, and a clear head. At 8:58, a meeting invite appeared in her calendar. Conference room B, 9:30 the following morning. The request came from Priya Nair, listed as executive assistant to the office of the chief executive. The subject line said, "Brief check-in requested by company leadership." Diana accepted it without thinking twice. Check-ins with leadership were normal. She had them regularly. She was prepared for check-ins. She was, in fact, excellent at them. She had no idea what was coming. She went back to her work. In the elevator at the end of the day, Rachel from accounts appeared beside her. They rode down together in the comfortable silence of people who respected each other without being close. "Let's just before the ground floor," Rachel said, without preamble, without looking at her. "Did you ever find out who that man was? The one you had leave the meeting?" Diana pressed her lips together. "A vendor, I think. Or a contractor." Rachel looked straight ahead at the elevator doors. "Right," she said. The doors opened. Diana walked to her car. She sat in it for a moment before starting it. Something about the way Rachel had said "right" sat just slightly wrong in her chest. Not enough to name, not enough to chase. Just a small thing. The way a shoe fits almost perfectly, but by the end of the day you know it doesn't. She started the car. She drove home. That night she watered the plant. She still didn't know who sent it. She did not sleep as easily as she had the night before. By 9 the next morning she was in conference room B with a notepad and her tablet, and the kind of prepared composure that had carried her through every difficult meeting of her career. The room was small and quiet, a table for 6, a window, a plant in the corner, which she noticed only briefly. The board liaison, a calm older man named George, came in first. He shook her hand and sat down. He said nothing useful. He was the kind of man who came to meetings to witness them. Then Marcus Hale walked in. Polo shirt. Different color than before. No bag this time. Just a legal pad and a pen with a bite mark on the cap. He sat down across from her. Diana looked at him. She looked at the pen. She looked at the legal pad. She looked at him again. She felt the room change temperature in a way that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. George said, very simply, "Diana, I don't think you two have formally met. This is Marcus Hale." She did not move. "He's the founder," George added, pleasantly, as if he were mentioning the weather, "and chief executive. He started the company 14 years ago." The room did not spin. That was the thing about moments like this. People imagined they would spin. The room stayed perfectly still. The walls stayed where they were. The light through the window was the same light it had been 30 seconds ago. Diana sat in the middle of it and did not let her face do anything she did not give it permission to do. She looked at Marcus. He looked at her. "Ms. Cole," he said, "thank you for coming." His voice was exactly the same as it had been in the conference room. Easy. Level. The voice of a man who had not spent the last 24 hours sharpening something against this moment. Which, she would understand later, was the thing that made it worse. Not worse like cruelty. Worse like weight. Like looking at something true. She had told him to leave his own building. She had looked at him, in front of 30 of his employees, and decided he did not belong there. She held the notepad in her hands. She said, "Mr. Hale, I owe you an apology." He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "You ran an excellent meeting, until you didn't." The room was very quiet. "The slide 7 projections were slightly off," he said. "You probably caught that last night. Your meridian flag was right, and I would have said so in the room. But the timing didn't work out." He tapped his legal pad once. "The floor trusts you. That took 8 months to build. That matters." Diana was quiet. "What happened in that meeting," Marcus said, "was a mistake in one direction. You acted on information you had. The information was incomplete." He paused. "That's not an excuse, but it's an accurate description." She looked at the table for a moment, then at him. "I told people in the hallway you were probably a vendor. I heard that. That was not appropriate of me." "No," he said, "it wasn't." George said nothing. He was very good at saying nothing. Diana sat up slightly. "I understand if there are consequences." "There are," Marcus said simply. She waited. "You're going to stay in your role," he said. "We're going to meet once a week for the next month. Not performance reviews. Working sessions. You bring your questions, I'll bring mine. We'll run them like meetings, because I think that's how you think best. He glanced at the legal pad. After that, we'll see where things stand. Diana did not fully understand in that moment what he was offering her. It would take her several days to understand it. That he was not punishing her by keeping her. He was trusting her with the harder thing, with the chance to do the work of becoming better inside the mistake, instead of being removed from it. She said, "I accept." Marcus nodded once. He stood up. So did George. Marcus picked up his legal pad and his bitten pen. He looked at her one more time, and in his expression there was something that was not forgiveness, because forgiveness was not yet the right word. It was closer to patience, the long kind. "Thursday," he said. 9 o'clock. He left the room. Diana sat there for a moment after he was gone. The plant in the corner caught the morning light. She thought about the one in her office. No card. She understood now who had sent it. She picked up her notepad. She walked back to her office. She sat at her desk. She looked at the broad-leafed plant in the window and thought about the kind of person who responds to being publicly dismissed by sending a plant with no card and calling a meeting with no accusations. She watered it that evening without being reminded. She had a lot to think about. She got back to work. The weekly meeting started on a Thursday. Marcus was already in the room when she arrived. He had a legal pad and the same pen. He had coffee, hot this time, in a paper cup from the cart downstairs. He did not stand when she came in. He nodded. She sat down. They got to work. There was no preamble. There was no small talk. Marcus was not a man who used conversations as warm-up exercises. He asked her about the Meridian account directly, with the kind of specific, informed questions that told her immediately he had read everything she had filed on it, not in preparation for the meeting, but because he had already been thinking about it. She answered everything directly. She made her case. He pushed back in 3 places. She held her ground in 2 of them and acknowledged the third. He wrote something on his legal pad. She did not ask what it was. At the end of 50 minutes he looked up and said, "What do you need from me to close Meridian by end of quarter?" She said, "Pricing authority on the lower tier. I can't negotiate effectively without it." He said, "You have it." She wrote it down. He said, "Next Thursday." She left. She sat in her office afterward and realized she had not thought once about the conference room incident the entire meeting. She had been too busy thinking. That was intentional, she suspected, but she did not ask. Outside the building, the city moved in its ordinary way. Traffic, wind, people crossing streets without looking up. The same city it had always been. Marcus, at that moment, was on the elevator to the 20th floor. He had his legal pad under one arm. His coffee was almost gone. He pressed the button and watched the numbers rise. At the 20th floor, he walked to his office, set down his things, and stood at the window for a moment. He thought about Lily, who had asked him at breakfast whether the frog she wanted would need a friend. He had told her yes, probably. Most things did. He had 3 reports to review before lunch. He had a call at 2 with the board chair. He had school pickup at 3:15. He sat at his desk. He opened the first report. There was, on the corner of his desk, a small purple stone. Lily had given it to him 2 years ago, pulled from a bag of decorative rocks she had found at a shop with her grandmother. She had handed it to him very seriously, and told him it was for good luck. He had kept it in the same spot since. He touched it now, briefly, the way you touch something when you're not thinking about it. He got back to work. The weeks moved the way weeks do, when there is real work inside them. They do not drag, and they do not rush. They simply fill. Diana closed the Meridian account in the 3rd week. She sent Marcus a single-line email. He replied with 2 words, "Good work." She printed it. She did not know why. She put it face down in the top drawer of her desk. In their 4th meeting, she asked him something she had been holding since the 1st week. She waited until they had covered everything on the agenda. Then she said, carefully, "Why didn't you say something when I first asked you to leave?" Marcus looked at her. "I wanted to see what you did with authority when no one was watching you use it," he said. She was quiet. "You acted consistently with the way you run everything else," he said. "That's useful information." It was still a mistake. Yes, but it was a clear one. He picked up his pen. Complicated mistakes are harder to fix. Clear ones you can work with. She thought about that for a long time after she left the room. That evening she stayed late again, not out of obligation but because she was in the middle of something and could not leave it half done. She was at her desk when she heard a knock at her open door. It was Owen from the front desk, holding an envelope. "Late delivery," he said. "Building courier. No name on the outside." She opened it. Inside was a single printed page, a corrected version of the Slide 7 projections from the quarterly meeting. Every discrepancy fixed. At the bottom, in handwriting, 3 words: "For your records." No signature. She looked at it for a moment. Then she filed it, neatly, in the right folder. She closed her laptop. She picked up her bag. She looked at the plant, which was doing very well in the window. It had put out a new leaf in the 3rd week, pale and small and insistently alive. She turned off the light. She went home. The city was lit up outside her car windows all the way there. Bright and indifferent and still, somehow beautiful. She drove through it with her window down a little. The air was cold and moved her hair. She left it down anyway. She had not thought about the meeting in several days. This, she was beginning to understand, was what moving forward actually felt like. Not a decision, not a moment, just the slow, steady filling of days with something other than the thing you are trying to move past. She pulled into her building's lot. She sat for a moment before she got out. She thought, "I will not make that mistake again." Not because of what it had cost her, not because of what it had almost cost her, but because she understood now what she had seen and chosen to dismiss. She had looked at a man and made a decision about his value based on a bag and a shirt and a cold cup of coffee. She had been wrong in the most ordinary way, the kind of wrong that required no villains, just a person moving too fast with too little information and too much certainty. She had been that person. She was working on being a different one. She got out of the car. She went inside. She watered the plant she kept in her kitchen window, a small, stubborn thing she had owned for 2 years and mostly ignored until recently. She had begun paying more attention to it. It was responding. She made dinner. She sat at her table. She ate. Outside her window, the city kept going. Marcus picked Lily up from school at 3:15 on a Friday, the last Friday of October, when the air had finally made up its mind about being cold, and the trees along the school road had gone gold and copper, and the particular shade of red that always made Lily stop walking and point. She pointed now. "Dad, look." He looked. "I see it. It's the most red thing. It really is." She took his hand, and they walked to the car. She had a drawing in her backpack, she told him. She had made it at lunch instead of eating all of her apple. She pulled it out in the car, a forest scene, orange trees, a small house with smoke coming from the chimney, 2 figures outside it, one taller, one smaller. "That's us," she said, pointing to the 2 figures. "I can tell," he said. "You're the tall one." I figured. She looked at the drawing for a moment, satisfied. Then she put it carefully in the front pocket of her backpack, the one with the zipper, where she kept things that mattered. "Can we get soup?" she asked. "We can get soup." They drove. She talked about Nina and a project at school involving maps, and whether their building allowed frogs, a question she had clearly been saving. He told her he had emailed the building manager about it. She said, "Really?" with the full force of her disbelief. He said, "Yes, really." She pressed her face against the window glass and watched the red tree until it was out of sight. At home, she did her homework at the kitchen table, while he made soup. She talked the whole time. He listened and stirred and answered questions and thought, occasionally, about other things, the way you can when you are a parent, and you have learned to split your attention without losing either thread. He thought about the weekly meetings. He thought about Meridian. He thought about Slide 7, fixed now, properly filed. He thought about the plant he had sent with no card, and how that had been, perhaps, a small thing that mattered in a way he had not fully calculated. He thought about what Lily had said once, 2 years ago, standing in this same kitchen, when he had been on the phone and distracted, and she had waited very patiently and then said, when he hung up, "Dad?" People can tell when you're actually paying attention. She had been 5. He had written it on a sticky note and put it on his monitor and thrown it away 3 months later, when it stopped meaning something new and had started just being wallpaper. He thought about it now. He looked at his daughter, who was drawing a small frog in the margin of her homework, a hopeful frog, a frog of great ambition. He brought the soup to the table. She looked up. Is it good? It will be. Okay, she said, and put her pencil down, and folded her hands on the table the way she did when she was ready for something, and he thought that this small gesture, this tiny act of readiness, was the most purely herself thing she did, and that he would miss it terribly when she grew out of it, which she would, and that the correct response to that was not grief, but attention. He sat down. He served the soup. They ate. Outside the kitchen window, the city was going dark early, the way it did in late October, lights coming on in the buildings across the street, the last red leaves on the tree at the corner, bright even in the dim. He did not think about the office. He did not think about the meeting in the conference room, the one where he had sat quietly in the back and held his daughter's drawing, and where a woman who was good at her job had decided with total confidence that he was nothing. He had thought about it less and less as the weeks passed. There had been no dramatic moment of resolution, no scene where everything was set right, just work, and the slow recalibration that comes when two people who are both serious about what they do sit across from each other and do it, week after week. The meridian numbers, the slide projections, the pricing authority, the plant with no card. Small things, true things, the kind that accumulate. Lily asked if she could have more soup. He gave her more soup. She went back to her frog drawing. He sat at the table and thought. Things can go wrong in an ordinary second. And then, if you are lucky and you choose it, they can get better in 1,000 ordinary seconds after that. Not with one big gesture, not with a reversal, just with the work, just with the attention, just with showing up, again, in a room where you belong. He had been doing that for 14 years. He would keep doing it. Lily held up the frog drawing. What do you think? She asked. He looked at it. Round body, wide eyes, a big, satisfied expression on its small green face. I think, Marcus said, that frog looks ready. Lily grinned. The full one, the one that took up her whole face. Me too, she said. She put the drawing in the important pocket. She zipped it shut. Outside, the last light left the sky over the city, slow and without announcement, the way most good things end, and most real ones begin.